Sweet. Okay, so we're just gonna like follow our little avatars around, starting off in Chelsea's room. And we're gonna spend about 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, and would love to hear Chelsea, you just talk about your process, what you've spent the last month working on, and then we'll do a little bit of Q&A before we move through the rest of the studios. So without further ado, my disco ball, we'll see you in Chelsea's room.
All right, so I'll just, I'm not going to actually, trying to think, I think it's maybe better to not share my screen. To start, I'm just going to talk a little bit, and then maybe I'll share my screen for folks who maybe don't have both things up, or for whom it might be hard to see both. But my project is called A Walk in the Dark, and it's based on an extension of my work on fog, which is thinking about the politics of visibility for trans people. And so A Walk in the Dark is really about thinking through darkness and obfuscation as a potential source of power for trans people moving forward in a very toxic political environment that we all are hopefully very clearly aware of. This work has really been part of an ongoing interest in a couple things. One is using artist websites as a form of artist book. So before I started making websites, I was making artist books. Some of the artist books I've made have been really sculptural in nature, or non-traditional, in that I'm attempting to try to create forms or ideas or concepts that aren't traditionally bound in a regular book form. And so for me, I see web design and artistic web design and artistic web publishing as just another extension of artist book publishing. And so this piece is a riff on the idea of a tunnel book. And a tunnel book is sort of an accordion style book where there's accordion folds on both sides, and then there are panels that usually have cutouts in the middle. So you kind of look through it like you would be looking down a tunnel. And so this book is, or this website slash book, riffs on that. And then the second thing that it's really thinking about is this idea of procedural generation balanced with curation. So thinking about like, how can I make something that does have randomness, that also has controlled, curated moments within them. Can you all still hear me? I got a flash saying internet unstable. Good, cool. So with this work, I'm thinking about how can I create something that has randomness, has surprise, while also having certain kind of guardrails or controls. In this case, that means that every time you load the page, it's choosing between one of 3 soundscapes that I've composed. It's choosing between 1 and 5 texts that I've written, and it's randomizing the scenes into a different order every time, meaning that there are functionally thousands of possible combinations for you to choose from. And when you get to the end of the book, which is 6 scenes, if you hit forward again, it automatically reshuffles and redoes that, and you can start over again. So there's this sort of infinite possibility of moving forward while still kind of being restrained in this space that I'm trying to think through. So I think with that, I'll just open it up. I'm not going to play the sound because last time we tried this during one of our group meetings, we discovered that the sound doesn't like to play, but I would highly encourage you all to you know, listen to the sound. The sound was composed using this setup over here, and all the code and everything else is just written by hand by me. All the 3D models that you're seeing are primitives in code. There's no 3D models created from somewhere else. So everything else is generated with code. So let me see if I can share my screen here. Okay, I think you all are seeing that. Okay. So with this work, you start out and you can use either the W and S keys or the arrow keys to move forward and back. One of the key features with this is a halftone filter that obfuscates the text in the scene in some ways. So part of my interest here is to create a scene that kind of lingers in a bit of darkness, but then that the filter or the texture also sort of obfuscates what it is that we're seeing. And so the combination here of text and image is what is randomly assigned each time from a predefined set of options. And through my studio visits and conversations, I've landed on this at least temporary form of coloration. And so this is a sort of balance between a grayscale version that I had and a color version that I had. So this becomes a sort of colored grayscale version of the piece. And here I'm interested also in that colored grayscale and this halftone filter, really reminding you that the image that you're seeing is one that is not in fact real, but that it is artificial space. And so as you get to the end, you're kind of subsumed in blackness. And if you choose to move forward, like I would, as someone who has played video games for their whole life and always am trying to figure out if I can bust the thing, it will give you the sort of ellipsis, and then you can continue to move through the piece. And I'm just now realizing that there's a bug where the audio turns on whether I want it to or not after you've moved through. So the other part of this is that the work still is very much in process. So it's something that I started at a residency last November and had just a couple scenes and barely anything started. And then through the residency here, I've really had the opportunity to develop the sound, which really did not exist at all prior to this residency. I was able to add more of the scenes, and I was able to add the text, which also did not exist before the residency. So throughout the residency period, I've really been able to get the piece to a place where it's really now feeling like the object that I want it to be. And now it's about refining, adding more content, and figuring out some detail things like how the camera might move to give the scene more warmth or softness or messiness, so it's not quite so static and those sorts of things. But the residency period has really helped me kind of push it over the line where now it does feel like the object that I had been holding in my mind for all of these months. Happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chelsea. Yeah. I want to kick us off with a question, which I know we talked the last time we had a studio visit, you were using a halftone coloring that had red, green, blue. I'm just curious to hear the evolution in your relationship to color and how that's playing out right now.
Yeah, so actually in a studio visit I had with Emrys, we were talking about like the purple color as like one of the key things I was really interested in, and that color sort of pushed through most of the scenes. And so the first thing I did after that conversation was I just made sure that that color was present in all of the scenes, and I kept using the color halftone. But even that, it still wasn't quite doing what I wanted it to do. As we had talked about, there was something about the grayscale that like retained the quality of kind of like darkness rather than light that the color filter was giving off. And so I went into the source code actually of the halftone filter, and I figured out how they were calculating grayscale, and I just manipulated their grayscale math to make an offset, so that it basically what it would do is it would read the image and it would take the RGB, and then it would average those so that you would end up with just a light dark value. And I took that average, and then after that averaged, I added an offset. And adding that offset is what gives the quote unquote pure white, that pinkish color, and the pure quote unquote dark, the dark purple color, and then the range in between. And so for me, that kind of does something where it allows for the sort of lushness of the color without kind of losing the quality that the gray tone filter was giving me of still feeling dark, based in darkness rather than based in light. So that's where I have temporarily come down on in terms of the filter. Yeah.
It's really interesting to hear you talk about that, because that's something that I was kind of responding to. I've seen this piece in development and in experiencing it, it really does feel like it has that sense of night in a way. And I was thinking about that. I was thinking about the color of sodium light, that kind of like pale yellow color that used to be associated with night. And now maybe that color has become more cool as LEDs have made their way onto streets. And so I think that's really successful. And I don't know if this is related to your changing of the mapping, but there's something about the way that the color gets lighter. It feels like it's burning. It feels like it's kind of like being overexposed in some way. And I don't know, I think that's really a successful experience on my end.
Thank you. Yeah, I did find that once I started manipulating that offset, the typical grayscale started to, not glitch, but it started to fail, like the burnout or the burn that you were talking about. It like the way the text, like as it gets really close, or the objects as they get really close, they do kind of get this sort of like incandescence in that last moment before they pass through. And there's something about that I'm also really drawn to. And yeah, it is something. I don't know exactly why screens do respond in that way, but it is something that got further exacerbated by the fact that I added that offset to the grayscale, which I just find that to be a nice happy medium between the two approaches I was first using.
I have a question. First of all, I really like this piece. I'm excited to hear that that it's still in development, because I want to see more. I'm wondering if you've ever messed around with stereograms.
I have, and in fact, I just moved studios, so I can't like pull it out. But a piece that I just made this last year. Do you know what a ViewMaster is? Like the old. So I made a poem for ViewMaster, and the ViewMaster relies on the stereogram to like make its images.
Whoa.
And so I made it's based on fog, which sounds like maybe we have things we should talk about. My whole body of work before this body of work and continuing is about fog. But yeah, the stereogram for me, I love that because I love anything that kind of is like right on the edge of like what we can perceive and what we can't perceive, and also anything that kind of like actively manipulates our sense of like perception. So yeah, I have used it, but in a physical form, not digitally. And I'm kind of curious about whether or not I can figure out I'm using 3JS as like what this tool is, but I'm trying to figure out if there are ways to get a stereogram to work online or other types like Magic Eye to work online. Because like the few things that I've tried, I've not liked their outcome, but I just threw a link in the chat too, and you can see the piece is called Fog As In, and it's like a printed custom ViewMaster disc that has a poem on it. But yeah, I love the stereogram, and I'm glad that you're at, like, the fact that you even asked that means that like I'm on the right track, because like visually I kind of want that kind of weird artifacting to be happening. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So just oh, sorry. I was just gonna say that I know that you can do it online. There's a you can play a snake game that's a stereogram, which is maybe the trickiest thing ever to like. Sorry, I just plugged in my computer. It's being weird. But yeah, it like moves around, and you have to remain kind of in that weird
like locked in.
It's really cool.
I will have to check that out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make you also have to have a conversation with Mattis, because Mattis has made some really awesome stereographic work.
I'm kind of obsessed with stereo cross-eye viewing. So it's when the two images are like separate, and then you manually sort of combine them using special eye tricks. But yeah, there's all kinds of different, like even Jenna, you were working with anaglyphs. You made a little library for
P5JS library that I can send you if you ever want to put on red blue glasses. But Mattis, is there a link? It was on Public Access Memories at one point of the 2D drawing that when you sketch on the screen, they merged into a 3D stereoscopic.
I can scrape.
I loved that piece, and if it exists on the internet and you can stick it in a link, I think you
Yes,
should.
please. Yeah, and Madison and I did talk about perception a lot in our studio visit already, so this surprises me 0%. Because yeah, that's like a huge part of the work in general is this, and the last piece is like really trying to call attention to like the mechanics of visibility as I'm talking about the politics of visibility, because I think that those two things they build on one another. If you get to think about how it is you're seeing something, then if I'm talking to you about the politics of seeing things, that those two things can start to productively kind of like build and rub against each other.
Maybe we'll take one more question, comment, thought before we move along.
I have one quick question. It just occurred to me when I was resizing my browser here, so I could have both of us on the screen. I'm curious what your take is on the dimensions of a piece in something like a browser that has variable dimensions. I get the sense from this piece that it has like a particular dimension. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, in previous iterations of this and other pieces, I've thought like, well, do I want it to be accessible everywhere? And the end result of this piece will likely be similar to my last piece, which is to say, I imagine it for a sort of laptop desktop view, like in roughly full screen. But if you're on, like in my last piece, if someone was on mobile, it would detect that you were on mobile and it would say, hey, you're on mobile. This is a bad idea. You're welcome to try, but also here's a video of the piece, or here's a link to send yourself to like view it later. And for me, that's less about like, it must be this proportion. And it's more just about like the way that I'm figuring out text and the way that I'm figuring out like the shapes of the scenes, because it's all based in code. Like I could, read someone's screen ratio and then have it immediately like shrink or fit to that. But I'm not terribly interested in it being like infinitely viewable on infinite numbers of devices. I just find like the landscape cinema format, because as we've talked about, like with classic games and those sorts of things, which like really kind of played with a pretty restricted resolution. It wasn't quite the 16:9 resolution that we currently use, but it was like, it was designing for the classic monitor, and that classic monitor was basically the same resolution, give or take a little bit. And so for me, I'm like, yeah, I don't actually need it to be infinitely compatible. It's generally meant for landscape, generally slightly wider screen. I don't think it really breaks down until you get to basically like a square. And once you get to a square, it starts to really get pretty messed up. But yeah, I don't really imagine the work being encountered in mobile. So as long as it's not portrait, I don't think it really totally breaks just yet. But yeah, I think part of me, that's also just part of like a resistance to, and I think Public Access Memories as a website does this in a way that I really love, like a resistance to frictionlessness. Like I don't actually need it to be a frictionless, like omnipresent experience. Like it can be like, oh no, I have to meet the piece where it is, even if that meeting is a pretty low bar. Like I'm kind of comfortable saying like, oh no, kick this link over to yourself through email, because I'm not going to spend an extra 20 hours making it look not as good on on a phone. Instead, I'll just like, code a little CSS that like puts a little splash screen that says, bad idea. Like this screen is way too small for everything I'm trying to do here. So
I appreciate that.
Chelsea, thank you so much. I thought this work was really strong. I've loved watching it develop. And I think you've had really thoughtful things to say about your work. So thank you for sharing your process. We are going to move along. Everyone clap for Chelsea.
thank you.
Yay.
And thanks for having me at the residency. It really has been like a really great experience. So really, it's been lovely.
I have really enjoyed every time we've met. you've expanded my world and practice in ways that you probably don't know. So yeah, it's been great. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on to Eddie's room. And hopefully by the time we get to Nate's room, which is having technical difficulties, this will be solved.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to share the screen. Folks can just enter the gallery, and it's a 360 video, so you can just play it and kind of look at it as I talk about things. So I'm tentatively titling this project Postbiotic Reveries. This project is exploring speculative ecological futures, mostly through the lens of the post-human, but also thinking about these kind of futures through certain Eastern philosophies. And so through this project and another series I've been working on, I've been exploring these ideas of what I've been calling a post-biotic future. And doing that through the construction of shrines. And so like shrines is a kind of visual mantra, if you will, as a kind of visual site of meditation and reflection about these futures. So when I say post-biotic, I'm thinking about this idea that is reconsidering the dominant, and I think the term is biota, but that describes kind of the kind of overarching ecosystem of like a certain region. So that could be like inclusive of flora and fauna and certain types of fungus and bacteria. So it kind of is this umbrella term. So a postbiotic future is a future that just like radically reconsiders kind of the knowledge frameworks through how we've come to define nature, at least through a kind of anthropocentric lens, right? And so this future that I'm looking at is kind of considering the postbiotic through concepts of the singularity. And so we've I think in kind of popular culture, we've heard that term through somebody like what is their name? Ray Kurzweil, who's talking about a singularity in which neural nets and artificial intelligence eventually surpass human intelligence. And so humanity is kind of folded into technology in a way that's, potentially oppressive, but it could be liberatory as well. Except I'm thinking of this idea of a singularity as, we're reaching an area in which in our current Anthropocene, humans are kind of destroying the earth. And so this singularity imagines humans in a far away future that have essentially folded into the rest of that biota. So humans have kind of merged with fungus and certain kinds of plants and animals, so that there really isn't any recognizable human forms anymore. And so this video is kind of experimenting that through a kind of immersive, this kind of immersive space. And so I'm working with a lot of the sense of ambivalence here. And so kind of the questions that I've been thinking through with this project is how far into the future is this, right? And then also in what ways are the elements attempting to kind of reclaim what was taken, right? And at least taken from nature, just from the ills of late capitalism, so to speak. This project also, because I've been indebted to certain histories and experimental practices and animation, a big part of my process here was to try to create this kind of patchwork, this hybridity of different techniques and effects. And so the background, the kind of flickering, weird landscapes in the background, those were made using stable diffusion models. And then I created the actual shrine or the altarpiece by I essentially built that sculpture in real time and then placed it on a spinning motor and then just took thousands of photographs of it. So like using photogrammetry software and then stitching together all of those photographs to create a digital model of that sculpture. And then I really jumped in and just like kind of did a crash course over the past 2 weeks in Blender. And as difficult as Blender is, one good thing about this project is I feel like I've kind of been beginning to figure out Blender's workflow. And so what I did in Blender was bring in that three-dimensional model, and I turned it into, like, I kept copy and pasting and kind of collaging together different aspects of that sculpture to create this like floating kind of primordial jellyfish type thing. I mean, it's like part landscape, part floating jellyfish is kind of how I'm imagining this. And part of that was because I had so much trouble in Blender, because it's just like Blender's a very, I mean, it's a heavy workload in Blender. Like just figuring stuff out is really hard. And so I was going to try to add different animations to the model, like some soft body animations, so it kind of had like a ripple-like liquid effect. But that model is so detailed, like it just has millions of like millions, like 2 million polygons. Like it's just a huge high poly model. And so I had a lot of difficulty animating it in Blender. So I just left it unanimated and then focused on kind of creating a visual rhythm through a virtual camera in Blender. So the idea is that a camera spins entirely around the shrine, so a 360-degree view, but it's kind of zooming in and out and looking around at the model, like inspecting it as it spins around. And so another interesting thing about this is like working in Blender, it's very difficult to see, like preview your 360 video in real time. So like I rendered this out and it probably took, it's probably like a 12-hour render overall. So I mean, it took a long time to render, but I really didn't know what the 360 video would look like until after it was rendered. And I think it turned out really well. Like it's more or less what I was thinking in my head, but I do like how you do have this kind of immersive subjective point of view of kind of being in and around the sculpture. And I'll also say, you know, just thinking about future possibilities for work like this, I really want to like think of a way to take more advantage of Babylon and using that code. And so I feel like I'm done with this particular project, but I want to make like more immersive shrines and do that in Babylon, but have more points of interaction. So like maybe animating those models like with a lower polygon count in Babylon, and then having it to where like you can interact with the mouse and maybe like click on and animate certain parts of that that shrine in maybe kind of weird, random, and unpredictable ways. And I think that the final outcome for this work, like I'm pretty happy with it in terms of kind of how it's finished up, is like I want to just make this into a virtual reality project. Like I think this makes the most sense in terms of just creating, like placing this in a VR rig, just based on kind of that environment. So that's probably what I'm going to do moving forward, is see if I can figure out how to kind of conceive of this in VR. But yeah, this was an awesome experience. I really enjoyed this residency, and there's just something to be said about like having this kind of online residency where you're just not confined to any kind of particular digital style. Like, I mean, I had a ton of fun just, you know, during the summer, like playing around in my studio and just trying to figure out how to make a film in Blender. So I'm very grateful just for that additional time and to be able to just make, like, you know, like Jenna said, just make some weird shit. So happy to turn it over if folks have questions, but I think that's about it.
I'll start because I have thought, which is I think I had two concerns about this work when we when I first started seeing it. One was, would the background feel sort of, would it be too a different style and a different aesthetic that wouldn't blend well with your sculpture? And I think it's right now, what I think is working so well about it is that I'm not necessarily paying attention to the background. There's sort of a cinematic, I like the way that the camera is panning and sort of informing my view and what I'm looking at. And so the focus is then not on sort of like the juxtaposition between the background and this weird sculpture. I'm really more engrossed in this like really intricate sculpture that you've built. And I think secondarily, I think I was concerned about this proliferation of stable diffusion and that being too present and it feeling like it consuming the work. But I think it's right now, to me, it's feeling more like it's just another tool in an artist's toolbox to help to create like a cohesive visual scene. So anyways, I think the final result I think you've made some really great progress in pulling this all together.
Thanks.
I was also pretty interested in the path of the camera and the movement through the space. I was asking myself whether or not I felt like it was from the perspective of something, but I feel like it's very disembodied. There's something about the way that it zooms in like an incredible amount that wouldn't be possible for like your eye to do. And then like it travels through the object and it moves in a way that is not sort of natural. It's too smooth. And so I feel it very disembodied, which I guess aligns with your ideas of the sort of end of humanity or some sort of like next space. So I think that's quite interesting and different in comparison to Chelsea's work, where the camera movement is like sort of showing the presence of a person or an individual. So it's an interesting contrast there.
Yeah, like I said, so much of this just came out of like the technical constraints of what I was doing. Like because like it was so difficult to work with that model, I was like, let me just try to make like a very dynamic, disembodied like camera that's just kind of swinging around. But it's also like when I was editing all that when it was not in 360. So it's like when it was rendered out and in 360, it was a nice surprise that the camera is actually zooming in that close, because it's very difficult. It was very difficult to like tell what it was going to look like. And maybe that's just me not, still learning Blender. But yeah, like I said, a lot of this just came out of like the frustration of just bringing in like a big model and trying to learn something as complex as Blender. But yeah.
I just want, oh
No, go ahead.
well, I just wanted to follow up on that and say the sense of the embodied viewpoint or not embodied viewpoint. It felt to me like it was the embodiment of something conceptual, like curiosity that can pop in and out of the body and go through material or look. It can be ocular, but it can also be sensory, and it can also be neurological. So I thought the viewpoint was really cool. And it's like you were saying, Matthias, it's like its flexibility or its adaptability in terms of pursuing the chord of curiosity or whatever that was, pulling us through the imagery. And then I wanted to ask a question about style, because you mentioned being in a residency with many different styles. How do you, when style is in this sort of digital space, what is the front line of stylistic character for you, either in your work or in this group of work, or what do you look for to recognize an artist, a person with a body and aesthetic decisions in work that is disembodied?
sorry, go ahead. Did you have something else you were going to say?
No, I just said I'll mute myself. Kind of doing
Oh,
like
okay.
a video. I'll mute myself.
Yeah, I think in terms of style, like for me, there's something to be said about, like again, kind of opening that black box, so to speak, of digital culture and how we just like typically consume images on an everyday basis. And so like I was thinking a lot about trying to like juxtapose something that was like very, very detailed and like clearly in this tradition of like computer generated imagery, right? And like something that has high fidelity with this background that's a bit more sketchy, so to speak, right? And so I was just kind of playing around with those two kinds of dynamic forms of movement, like going in and around this high poly model, and then you know, as you're kind of investigating and looking at these fine details, you're also ever so slightly kind of looking off in the distance and wondering, like, what is this strange? And I was almost imagining this as like an Appalachian holler, like, so there's this weird shrine, but it's kind of embedded within this holler where, you know, light's coming through from the trees and whatnot. And then I'll also say to your other point, yeah, like when I was thinking about creating the perspective and viewpoint of this, I was thinking in terms of conversations in Buddhism around, like, I mean, it would, I guess, trying to think of how to put this into terms that makes sense. So it's just like having an awareness and curiosity without an ego. So like just imagine like death, and then you're able to like perceive, like there's just perception, there's just curiosity, but there's no one actually perceiving it. Like there's not a human form or an ego to perceive. So I was playing around with this idea of what it's like to look and perceive and be curious about the world without like placing any kind of narrative or opinion on it. Like it's just perception, just mind, just looking, right? And so that's interesting you say that, because that's kind of this tradition I was attempting to convey here.
Thank you.
Of course.
I haven't done a great job of being a timekeeper, but Dion, do you have something quick
Yes.
to add? And then
I do. Well, I guess depends on how quickly you can answer this question. But I have two questions. The first is just, you mentioned someone's name. Can you repeat who that was? It was somebody who's like discussing this idea right now.
Oh, like Ray Kurzweil, I think is how you pronounce that. But you know, like I've had my students read that. Like I had a critical AI studies course, and like that's kind of like popular. I mean, Ray Kurzweil is like the computer scientist of what like Neil deGrasse Tyson is to kind of thinking about physics. So like some of his ideas are interesting, but that's just where I was seeing like this popular conversation around a singularity, yeah, and what that is.
Yeah. I'm just really curious because I actually have a show coming up in November that is literally about a post-species world. And singularity plays a role in like the next evolution of species.
Yeah.
So I'm curious like how you're arriving at the forms. Yeah, like what is driving form?
So yeah, I think it's like back to that sense of ambivalence. Like I'm trying to kind of have something that's has a kind of scientific, like empirical detail. Like we can kind of study this weird organism hyphen shrine. But the form itself, like the high poly model, is just supposed to be like this strange merging of like I said, flora, fauna, and certain types of fungus, but it's also like overtaking remnants of human forms. So like that's why there's like weird TV screens embedded in there that have eyes. And so I was just trying to kind of imagine this singularity as a new organism, like as a new kind of natural form that surpasses like how we think about nature. As I said, through like the lens of the human, so to speak. That makes sense.
Yeah, really cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and we'll know we're probably running out of time, so I'll shut up.
I can totally, if people want to be connected after this, just let me know, because I do see some really interesting intersections between some various practices of several people in here. Yay, Eddie! Go, Eddie. Thank you, Eddie, for your contributions to the space. It's been a lot of fun. We're gonna move on to Nate, who I must admit, at the beginning of this call, I got a message from Nate that was like, my piece is having a technical difficulty, so I wrote some code while I've been sitting here that hopefully fixed it. But thank you for having grace for our technical progress. Anyways, I'll kick it off to you, Nate.
Yes. So I'll continue that by saying I am by no means a coder, but I'll talk more about that and how it connected with my practice at the end of this. So generally in my work, I attempt to transport the viewer to a place or make them witness an event that's so different from themselves that they question what it means to be themselves or what it means to be human. And I kind of call that, or it is an ontological inquiry, which I'm really attached to. And sort of my work has moved throughout different types of ontological inquiries. So I started with speculative biology and ecology, similar to Eddie's work, or similar in topic, where I was creating creatures and environments that I wanted to use to visually question why, as humans, when we see an organism that's adapted for an environment that's very different to ourselves, we call them alien because we push them away. So that was my work for a while. I also was really interested in making sort of intangible things tangible or questioning them. I was really interested in things like bird murmurations and how they sort of move, and like things like the ocean makes this frequency that only, it's incredibly loud, but we can't hear it. Only satellites can hear it, and that just like blew my mind. So I was really interested in weird little things like that that happen, but like as humans, we have no need to be able to hear it, which is crazy to me. But lately, what more pertaining to this current work, I've been really interested in dream logic and building dreamscapes. So my specific interests sort of within dreams are, I'm really interested in this theory that dreams, specifically nightmares, are sort of pockets of trauma in our brain that we're re-experiencing or experiencing to like move through something. So like while we're in this crazy traumatic event, our brain is actually healing. And I was just like really interested in that thought process. So that's kind of why I made these little like 360 bubble videos, which I may pull up in a second, but I was sort of interested in visually emulating that with this. And then I'm also really interested in the mind's ability to remember things in dreams. Because like I'll have a dream where I can remember someone's face vividly and they'll have like a very specific outfit on, but I can't do that in my like everyday life. And I never know whether my brain is just so capable of remembering that thing because it's so focused, or whether I'm sort of in a headspace where it's actually not that vivid, but it feels vivid to me. So I'm really interested in that cross-section, that intersection of wondering whether my brain just doesn't trip off when something's not vivid, or whether it's doing a great job of simulating an environment. And I used AI in this, some AI prompt tools, which I'll talk more about later. But I was really interested in sort of how AI also emulates that. So it sort of works off of the imagery that it already has. And then it creates these sort of random worlds based on lots of other factors, which felt similar to me to the way we create dreams. And like, if we're like stressed about a like big work meeting or something, we'll have a dream about that meeting going really badly, those kinds of things. So I'm not really interested in the way that people have already said like, oh, like AI is like dreamlike or surreal. Like I'm not super interested in that, but I'm interested in using AI as a tool to help me emulate dreamlike environments that sort of push these questions that I'm asking. And yeah, I'll pull that up in a second. I'll just say though, I really enjoyed working in this space, like website space, because I have sort of worked in a lot of different mediums. I'm very interdisciplinary. I've like done poetry, choreography. I'm a designer and a visual artist. And the more I try different things, the more I realize how similar they are. And I just really enjoyed like how poetic these websites can feel and how they felt like a book. They felt like sort of like choreographing a dance or like creating a soundscape. Like it just felt so rich to me. And I think I really want to continue to push like my work in a website context. Yeah, I will share my screen if I can. I'm really bad at this. Okay. So I'm just going to pull this up through a 360 viewer because the website, I think, is lagging because there's like people on it and I'm on like summer camp internet. So I will just drop some of these in there. Excuse me. Okay, so I'll drop this one in. So yeah, I just worked with CC0. Can you see the like video that's playing, everyone? Great, sweet. So I took 360 pictures that are available like content free online in the public domain. And they're just like pictures of really regular like forests and cathedrals and buildings. And I did lots of little tiny AI prompts in Photoshop. So I like added in little creatures and like asked it to like change the trees or like do all kinds of things. Like this one was a forest and I added this building in and really like stacked prompts on top of each other until they completely changed the entire thing. And then I used that as the starting frame to make an animation. And it really sort of took them all in a super wild direction. And a lot of weird glitchy things happened that I didn't like at first, but I really became interested in throughout the process. So one of them being this like huge seam that happens because in 360 videos, both sides are exactly the same. And that's why when they wrap, there's no seam. But I manipulated them so much that both sides were not the same anymore. But I was kind of interested in the top and the bottom and the way that all of this sort of dream material gets like swallowed into these like holes. And I was also really interested in the way that when the video starts over, it is all the same imagery, but it just juts back to one place. And you have to kind of wonder like whether it actually started over or lagged or skipped. And that kind of felt to me like in dreams when I randomly change places or I randomly change who I'm talking to in the dream, and it's not alarming to me until I wake up and I'm like, wait, was that dream in like a boat or like in a school? And then all of those things happened and I didn't really know how I switched between them or how I got there. So yeah, and I also put them in this little when it looked, yes. So I put them in this format because I felt like this was an interesting feel, like that emulated the sort of poetic feel that I was going for. It felt like chapters to me. And I like that the viewer doesn't know a lot about what they're stepping into, but they kind of have to guess which one they like or which one they're interested in starting in. And then they click in and they're completely surprised by what's pulled up. And they can pull out of that, or they can switch between them. they can spend a lot of time in one, spend a lot of time in the other. And that felt to me like I was emulating that theory about going through pockets of imagery to move past something. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have.
Thank you, Nate. I wanted to tell you that I discovered with Eddie several hours ago that uploading 360 videos to Vimeo is the way to go, because Eddie had some like 800 gigabyte videos and I couldn't get them to play without lagging. And then, so if you wanted to increase the resolution, we can redo this. I would recommend uploading them to Vimeo. That was my thought about that.
I was about to ask about resolution. I'm kind of into the low resolution of these ones at the moment. There's something about it that like maybe allows them to be more dreamlike because you don't have the information there. And I think often in 360 videos you get a drop in resolution because you're only seeing like a fraction of the whole image. But maybe that's something to lean into because it like opens up the possibilities of interpretation. I don't know. I'm kind of into it.
Yeah, so the first one that I did, I exported in like way too high of a dynamic range so that when I put it through a bunch of prompts and filters, it still looked really high resolution. And it felt like really odd to me, like it wasn't going in the right direction. It felt more like some weird like IMAX experience. And I didn't like that. And I accidentally exported one that was this like terrible resolution, and I really enjoyed it. And it felt sort of like hazy to me in the way that I was going for. So I exported them all like that. So I was leaning.
Oh, go ahead, Eddie.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, what was I gonna say? Yeah, I like the low res. I almost wonder, because when I think about dreams, there's not like dreams are very non-local, right? Like it's like you don't have like a sense of where you are in space. Like you're one moment you're in the supermarket and then you're in a swamp or whatever. Like there's a lot of non sequiturs in terms of location in dreams. So I almost wonder if you like edit it more to where every once in a while it like would slowly blur out and then like come back into focus or something. Yeah, because I kind of like the low res approach. And the other thing I was gonna say is the way that you have this set up on in your gallery, I think is really cool. Like clicking on the different links and like opening up these different vignettes reminds me one of a game like Myst, right? There's just like a very early like adventure game, early 90s computer game vibe here. And then I wonder like if you could like turn it into like a game or something. Like I almost imagine using Twine to like click on these different worlds and then maybe lead someone through a non-linear narrative or something. That's just what came to mind. But yeah, I think this is really cool.
I appreciate that. I was really going for that sort of feel that these clicks are like a portal, and that felt very game-like to me, and I like that connotation with them. And I definitely want to explore how I can like resolve or like add more wireframing to feel like, not that I even know how to do that or what any of that means, but how to like feel more resolved where like the viewer can transport between them in like an interesting way, or there feels more like there's actually a physical like movement. And I definitely want to go in that sort of game like wireframing direction.
You might hate this idea. For whatever reason, when I was setting this up on the site, I had this desire to make these portal windows that were like small in the middle of the screen. that would restrict the like viewing experience to like a space within the browser, almost because it felt to me, if it's going to be presented in a low resolution type of way, that there that it almost, I don't know why, but like there's something about it being immersive felt counterintuitive to me, that I wanted it to be like a small voyeuristic, like a something at a distance. But I wonder if there's any consideration around, like, if you are going to go the 360 video route, about sort of like, it's almost like the third wall, like revealing to the user that they are in a browser experience by displaying that in some capacity. That was, for whatever reason, that was something I was thinking about when I was looking at your work.
I'm really into that. I like the idea of like portholes and like being able to peek through something and that feeling like a portal or like a window into another world. I'm really interested in those things, and I'm also interested in the idea of like there's not only one way of being immersive, and that's usually like massive scale or like being ever surrounding. But I think also things that are tiny and make us question like how large we are in response to the work can be also just as immersive.
Awesome. I hate to cut things short. I want to try to get us out before it gets too late.
Thanks so much.
So I want to say thank you, Nate.
Thank
Yay. Thanks from the sister. Cool. Okay. Last but not least. Oh, my screen just got smaller. Zhuoyu. And I'm sorry, the password, I realized I got your message too late, was Rez, REZZ Rockstar. But it's too late now. No worries.
There's actually a typhoon approaching Hong Kong, so my internet has been really unstable. I feel like, so excuse me for taking the video off for this moment. I feel like I would just talk my projects through, and you guys can try to enter the studio room of mine. You might take a second because they're loading the script and code and everything. And maybe you can just play it on your own, or I will try to do the screen share on my side, but I don't know if it's doable at this moment. But I will just introduce my project quickly. For now, it's actually in the format of a visual novel, and a visual novel, you can think this off as like a choose your adventure game, but it's more like an interactive fiction. So often it's more about text driven and with lots of anime manga style art. And one thing I really need to point out, so instead of those kind of hyper complex gameplay, visual novel is more focusing on the storytelling and character development. And so at this point, my game is actually inspired by my personal experience as a user in this kind of hyper saturated digital world. So I often find myself caught up in this sense of fatigue in this endless loop of digital labor that's been disguised as leisure. So even during the rest time, I find myself performing for the hidden infrastructure for the system, trying to contribute to the system, giving feedbacks, engaging in those content, and being trackable. So that leads to the question to me, what's the concept of being free, and what's the concept of having your own agency. So I wanted to create this game not to demonize the system, but I'm trying to review the quiet mechanism that we have normalized, such as like the interface, the notifications, the feedback loops. They all are like slowly teaching us to align with the invisible demands. And the more we participate into the system and contribute to the system, the more we internalize these patterns. So the key of this game, it's about the illusion of agency in this algorithmic culture. So I will try to share my screen right now, but if it's not smooth, maybe Jenna, you can share the screen for me. Cool.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Let me do that.
Um,
I don't know if it's going to share the audio too, but
uh, let's
are
see.
you
If it's
sharing?
not
Sorry.
sharing, no, yeah, I'm sharing it, but I don't know if the audio is coming. Can you guys hear the audio?
No, I don't think so.
Do you mind doing it on your side, Jenna?
Yes, there was a button to share audio. To share audio, share a tab instead. Okay. I don't have a tab in this browser window. I need to. accessmemories.com. Let's share that. Okay. I hope you can hear audio. Can you hear audio?
Yes, I can hear the audio.
You can hear it? Okay, great.
Yeah.
I'm like, which one is Tumblr? I use Tumblr. That one.
When you're facing like the branching point, you can save it at the very bottom of the menu, so we can always go back and to see what's the other choice is gonna be like.
Oh, cool. You have done so much work since I was here last.
Appreciate it.
What would you like to do next? Return. Okay, cool. Do you want me to go through the? I have no conception of how much awesome work you have done, but let me know if you want me to keep
I
going.
actually did both, so whichever one you prefer.
Okay. Mm. I'm all starting to be like, this feels so personal.
So you just
Mm.
achieved one of those bad endings at this point. Speaking of the narrative structure, I'm using a string of pearl narrative. So it's kind of structure that appear to be open, but it's often fundamentally linear structure. So between those key plot nodes, where you encounter those micro decision making part, player are offered with different endings. So you see you have micro choices and some dead ends, and also just like the one you did, and also some optional detour. But all of the paths, they eventually are coming back to the main track. So you can see it as one of the side quests, the one we just achieved, and then when you return to the main menu, you can see there's a load option on the main menu, and we can load to the point that we saved from the last time.
Mm.
Do you mind
Oh.
loading it?
Okay. Are these just for maybe?
Maybe we can start it over. It seems like it's not saved for some reason.
Mhm. I wonder, I don't know how it would persist state on itch.io. Oops. But did you want to just demonstrate how different narratives lead to different sort of converge back in the same spot?
Yeah, sure. I'll try to play it on itch.io and see.
Mhm.
Oh, you can actually skip it, so we don't have to go through that all over again. It's at the bottom, the third option. Yeah. You can click on examine the closet first, and then we can skip it.
Under load?
Yeah, the third option, it says skip. Yeah. So last time you click on yes, but this time we can try to click on no to see what's gonna happen.
Oop! I got to the end. I must have clicked too quickly. So you, I want to save a little time. I want for questions, and prevent us from getting out too late. But I would love to hear. It seems like you've done an incredible amount of work in just the last like couple of weeks, and
There
it
are
looks
actually
really beautiful.
a couple of more different paths, but the link is still open. If you guys wanted to play it, you can always play on itch.io. Hopefully in the future I got to update it and keep on working on it. So actually because yeah, I don't think we have the time to finish the rest of it. There actually one more chapter, but we'll see. Yeah, I think it's time for questions.
Yeah, and I think the cool thing is I'm going to leave this work up for at least a month or two, or even beyond. And so I think it's an awesome opportunity to invite, obviously, anybody that's on this call, anybody that you want to show this work to, particularly if it continues to develop. If you want to have, like, let me know. We can post on Instagram, like, that there's an update that the work has evolved and people should come back and spend some time with it. I think that's a great opportunity to let people experience it on their own time.
I just wanted to add a thought that I have to admit I don't often play interactive novels, but it's incredible how much the simple act of having a choice presented to you changes your engagement with something. I feel like it would be very different if it was just sort of an animation, for instance, but having the option to choose these options, even if in the end you get cycled back to the same narrative, it does something really interesting in terms of your engagement with the story and the narrative. So I think that's an exciting format to work with.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. because I didn't want this work to become like a sudden realization or like a sudden warning to patronize my player. So I actually wanted to like gradually build up the realization in like a safe or cozy space, like a browser experience. I think it's gonna be more intimate to really like slow down your pacing and to actually contemplate on your own and to create resonance with your personal experience. And one thing, the reason why I choose this format, the visual novel format, is because I think this kind of genre encourage the slowness, and there are lots of reading, lots of repetition. It's often, I think, discouraged in this platform because right now people nowadays they prefer like short reel videos and everything is like more fast paced. But right now, this kind of genre is like gently asks you to questions, or gently asks you to be slowed down, and that's one thing I really appreciate. But it's often like sidelined as like a subcultural thing or like a niche. So I think the format itself it's actually aligned with my ideology. The format it's already embodied like the concept of the illusion of agency I'm critiquing on.
I wonder, I I think so often in art there's a balance between what you reveal and what you hide, and which is, I think all artists sort of struggle to some extent with that in terms of like, wanting to not be too heavy-handed, to leave room for poetry and leave room for the individual user or viewer to sort of bring their own narrative and experience to the work. And so I do see a tension in this work of how you get the user to critique these systems, and I think you use the word without being too pedantic or too heavy-handed. And so I wonder, I'm curious how you think about, as you craft this narrative, how you think about that tension of like, how explicit are you about, your phone is surveilling you. I'm curious your thought process in that dimension as you develop this work.
Yes, I was trying to adopt like a iceberg, like a narrative architecture. So I feel like in this kind of platform-centric world, storytelling should not be passively received, especially within the space of visual novels. So I feel like the narrative should be something that's triggered rather than delivered. So in this kind of format, I feel like story it's emerging from the act of playing. It should be gradually revealed through like motions, moments of like uh small actions, and also the replayability of having a transmedia storytelling, so you can always come back to the branching point and save and load. It's less about like reading a novel. Reading a novel is more like a sequential plotting, right? But in here it's more about on your own. So like the player they can descend through like layers of different fragmented information. And let's see, the time you were playing, you were doing the gameplay, when you are facing the first branching point, you luckily click on the main track. But for other people, they might have choose the side quest path, so they can like perceive the world building differently than you than you got to discover. So I feel like through the layers of fragmented information and different personalized prompts based on your decision that you made, and also different instructions, each step can be uncovering like a underlying logic of the system, and it's actually reflecting on our reality, our real life world. So the logic of the system, of the infrastructure, sometimes they want it to remain invisible, remain unseen. So I'm not using the protagonist as like a teller or like a story narrative teller, but I feel like I'm more seeing it as like a emotional anchor point for the player, for them to project their emotion, to reflect on things that they share in common with. So the progression of the game is less about the event, but it's more about either way you wanted to interpret it.
Cool. I think you did amazing work with the visuals and the audio. Also, I can't believe how much work you produced in that amount of time. We have been here for an hour and 40 minutes, and so I want to wrap so that we don't hold people here for longer. First of all, go Zhuoyu. Great work.
Thank you so much.
I just wanted to say thank you so much to all 4 of the residents. This month has been a lot of fun. And I always, every time I have a meeting like this, I always want to emphasize that public access memories is like, it is what people like you guys want it. Like, if you have an idea for a solo show, a group show, you want to do another residency, you want to pitch a curatorial project, like this is an open canvas that is really just what I do in my free time. And so anybody that's excited about making stuff on the internet, like I'm excited to collaborate. So always feel free. Obviously, I think I've added everybody to the mailing list. Maybe not everybody on this call, but to follow along, submit work to open calls. Feel free to email me at any point. It's like, hey, I have this idea. I want to work on something. I love hanging out. I love doing this kind of thing. Love meeting people like you guys. And this has been a labor of love. So thanks to all of you. Really, really had a blast. I think to the residents, I'll shoot you guys an email just as like a wrap up. If you have feedback, thoughts, questions, concerns, things we could do better to make this experience more meaningful. If anybody on this call wants to get connected to anybody else, I can also make that happen. So feel free to email me about that. Maybe I'll just connect Dion. I'll ask Dion who Dion wants to be connected to, because it seems like you have some things to say. And then the last thing I wanted to say before I'm gonna go around and make everybody just say like a quick something goodbye, because I want to hear you talk before I talk forever. Is the next show is gonna be a Wrong Biennial show. We're gonna launch the open call in the next week. The general theme, this version of the Wrong Biennial, if you're unfamiliar with it, it's like this decentralized, it's a very loosey-goosey biennial where anybody who wants to participate can participate. But I kind of like it as an organizing structure to like be a part of a bigger group of artists that are exhibiting work. And you have to make a pavilion of 10 artists to be officially a part of the Wrong, whatever. And this year it has to be tangentially related to AI. So the statement that we're working on is something to the effect of like exploring the black box nature of AI, and in particular, sort of as a critique of the black box nature of AI, we're hoping to get submissions of work that like are really foregrounding process and are making your work and your thoughts and and everything that goes into the creation of work like really transparent, sort of an antithesis to the experience of like how some of these big large language models work, where the inner logic is sort of opaque to us. The thought for this body of work is, you know, whether that's a personal archive, whether that's a really interesting means of like exposing your mind map or like your process, or making that really foregrounding your process. Anyways, I've been blabbing for a while, but that's, look out for, if you are interested in participating in the Wrong Biennial, I will be sending some email communications about that shortly. I just want to spin around and say goodbye, and maybe a feeling that you're feeling. I'm Jenna. I'm feeling grateful. Goodbye.
Thanks, Jenna, for all your hard work. I think this upcoming show sounds really fantastic. You've got my gears turning in my head. So I'm looking forward to seeing what it shapes up to be. I think I'm losing bandwidth in my internet connection. Everyone is slowing down, but great seeing you all.
Go Chelsea, because you're next to me.
Okay. I will just say one more time. You stole my word. I was gonna say grateful, because it really, you know, being in a rural place, it's really just lovely to be connected with folks. So yeah, I'm gonna be okay with copying your word and say grateful.
Go Nate.
Hi, Nate again. I'm feeling in awe of how these 8 artists from these 2 rounds can do sort of website art so differently, and how that can be involved in their practice. And that's really inspiring for me. So.
Zhuoyu.
Hi, I'm feeling really satisfied at this moment seeing other people's work, and thank you so much for the help throughout, and also thank you for the help and the feedback and suggestions from other residents, and hopefully we got to connect in the real life space as well.
That would be cool. Eddie.
Yeah, I think the word I'm thinking of is like reinvigorated. Like I just got up with over the past few weeks, like so many cool artists that are doing similar things, and like I just have so many new ideas. So yeah, I just feel kind of recharged in that way.
Sweet, I love that. Dion, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I'm like really excited about all of your work and was kind of freaking out the whole time. So thank you, Jenna, for inviting me to this.
I'm so glad thank you.
Yeah, this is really cool. And it's cool also seeing, I mean, I just texted this to you actually, but it's cool seeing your like grad project kind of blossom into this whole other thing that is like so related to what you were doing then, but then like much bigger and broader, and yeah, just really cool. Congrats.
That's really sweet of you. Thank you. Yeah, Dion, this whole public access memories thing was kind of my MFA thesis. So Dion has seen it go through different iterations, and here we are. So thank you. That's really sweet. Pat, you got anything to say?
Wait.
Oh, you're muted.
Hold on. Here he comes.
We were supposed to play pickleball today, but obviously we're here.
Hey, I loved watching everybody's work and interacting with everything. It's really cool to be able to kind of just stay in one place, but also travel through the web and hang out with everybody at the same time and talk to everybody. And and see what everybody's up to. So thank y'all.
And Devin, I don't know if you're still there, but if you are, hello, goodbye.
We're still here.
Are you
Yeah.
still here?
Yeah.
Yay.
I want to say thank you, Jenna, and thank you to all the artists. As someone who has a really boring job, like this was just like opening my mind to all this creativity out there that I forgot about. So just so awesome.
Yay, thank you. And I don't know if Emily Ferrant. Oh, Devin's here too. Bye, Devin.
Yeah, I'm just gonna echo that.
Thank you for coming, Emily, if you're still here. Okay, it's been awesome. Thank you guys so much. I was gonna say I love you, which is a little weird, but it's not. I do. Okay. And I hope to see you in the future. Best of luck with all of your work. Take care and see you in cyberspace.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See ya.